Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of Culture of Wellness, where we talk everything wellness and about ways that we can make sure that we are showing up fully and authentically ourselves while getting some tools and tips to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves so that we can take care of others. So, I am your host, Coach Racquel. And I am so excited to be on this journey with you as we are figuring out the best ways to be the best version of ourselves. And so today's talk or podcast topic, all that good stuff, is going to be about one, some of the different areas of wellness. I think it's so important to really share that out. And then we're going to also talk about the way that we show up, like the roles that we play or feel like we have to play. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And of course, at the end, I will be sharing out with you a question that has been asked of me. And of course, if you have any questions, be sure to either put it in the chat or you can email me at hello@urbanedrx.com if you want to be a little bit more anonymous as I ask your question out. So let's get started. So culture of wellness, we talked all about that last week and about the fact that it's an active pursuit of us being sure that we are being our best versions of ourselves, making sure that we're taking care of ourselves, making sure that we're growing and that we're developing in a way that isn't just for us, but in a way that we're actually able to support each other, right? In a way that humanity is kind of pushed forward, especially nowadays, as I know people in the church often say, we living in the last days, stuff like that. But it truly is a space like after COVID, so much stuff has happened and gone on. And I think if nothing else, we learned that we got to do things a little differently. And so we're going to be talking about that on this show about how can we do things differently in a way that still honors ourselves, but also in a way where we're growing and in a better position to use our gifts to support the world, right? We're all here to serve in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Um, and some of us know kind of what that looks like, and some of us are still figuring it out. But at the end of the day, there's something that you do that is better, or let's not use better because then that's competition, but there's something that you do that is going to serve humanity or the world or the earth in a way that only you could. So that's what we're going to be talking about, right? How do we figure that out and do it in such a way that we are bringing light to this world, to this earth, to each other? So today, we're going to talk a little bit about the different areas of wellness. There are so many. It just depends on who you're talking to and which theory or theorem you like to use, all that good stuff. But I actually wanted to bring forth there's a man by the name of John Travis. He's one of the pioneers of the wellness industry. And I like he has 12 dimensions. So a lot, depending, sometimes there's three, some people use five, some people use seven. And again, they're all more than just your physical body. That is not what wellness is. Wellness is a collective, it's an active pursuit of us finding ways to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves in a nutshell. That's what that is. So I like his though because it's not just a word, right? A lot of the other areas, or when we're talking about wellness, it might be like, oh, physical health or mental health, right? Such broad topics, because even under physical health in itself, you're talking about like 20 different things. We're talking about eating, sleeping, we're talking about exercise, we're talking about are you taking, your skincare routine, like, what you drink, all that kind of stuff is falling under our physical health, right? So we could, each of the areas kind of has that. It breaks out into a bunch of different limbs. But what I like about John Travis is that he really looks at things in terms of action, right? And since we talked about really wellness being an action, right? An active pursuit or a conscious decision or direction that we're choosing to take in our lives. And remembering that it's a journey, right? So again, that movement, it's not a stagnant place. It's not somewhere you arrive to, but something that you're continuously improving, developing, growing in over the course of your life. And so I think that's why I really do enjoy his 12 dimensions of wellness, because they're all action based, right? It's you doing something or being something or receiving something. Um, the other thing, and if you Google it, you can really see he has this picture, and it's called the wellness continuum that he uses. But I'll just give you kind of a quick visual of it. It's kind of like a the little arrows, so if you think of it as a spectrum, right? Wellness on a spectrum, it's not just like one area. And in his spectrum, you're either moving towards illness or you're moving towards wellness, right? So moving towards illness, disease, or you're moving towards wellness. But what I really like is one of his pictures, it has like a little old lady in a wheelchair, right? And even though she's like towards the illness side, she's facing the wellness side. So she's in a wheelchair, she's older, right? She's aging, but she's facing towards the side of the arrow that's pointing towards wellness, which means that she's actively doing something to improve her physical state or to improve her state of wellness. And then on the other side of the street, because it's kind of like it looks like a little street, um, there's a young guy, fit, he's running, right? But he's facing towards the disease side, or the illness side. And I think for me, that's so key when we're talking about wellness and the journey, because it really does matter where you're facing. Like, yeah, maybe you just had, you suffered some type of major illness, but you're doing things to get better, right? That means you're facing towards the wellness side, right? You're learning something new, you're doing something different so that you can grow, right? Maybe, your attitudes are changing, your habits are changing. So that means you're moving towards the wellness side. Just because people look fit on the outside does not mean that they are living a well life, right? You can't look at somebody and determine their form of wellness. And unfortunately, a lot of times we like to do that, right? You look at somebody, oh, she's fit, she's trim, and you think that, she's in the gym 20, hours a week or something like that. But meanwhile, she's home and she's eating a bag of Doritos, the whole thing, the family size, so it really is about the attitudes that we have, the behaviors, and there's no judgment in any of this, right? It's a knowing, an understanding, and also a curiosity. You'll hear me say that a lot about what is it that you want, right? Where are you trying to go? What is the goal that you have for yourself? Is it okay for the way that you're living your life, right? Does that make you happy? You know what I mean? To be exactly where you are and not change anything. Or are there some things that you want to change that would make your life easier? So I definitely think we have to start looking at it from a curiosity lens and kind of remove the judgment, right? Who are we to judge other people? And also, who are we to be judging ourselves? Because it just makes you feel bad. And that is not a good way of living. And as you hear a lot, hurt people hurt people. Well, that comes sometimes from that disappointment or from that judginess of judging ourselves, other people, that kind of puts us in a space of frustration, annoyance, with other people, because you're looking at somebody else wishing that you had that. So I think as we think about a culture of wellness, it's really about figuring out how do we balance, right? How do we balance things out? You don't have to be perfect one way or the next, right? It's not about just trying to do everything perfect, which we talked about in our last segment, right? We don't have to be perfect. You just have to try a little something new, something different, right? That's going to make you feel better. That's going to help you to be a better person to other people, so that you're not bringing sorrow, to those that are around you. So I'm going to share out some of the 12 dimensions of wellness from John Travis. And again, you can always Google this, especially if you want to see that cool little picture that I was talking about with the little lady and the young guy running. So one of the first areas that he talks about is self-responsibility and self-love, right? Making sure that we are being responsible for how we're showing up. Um, Hopefully you don't hear the dog barking in the background. I'll be self-responsible for the fact that I didn't remind my son to close the door as he walked out of the room. um, so anyway, self-responsibility is just making sure that we're regulating, that we're more aware of the way of ourselves. Like, what's going on with you? Again, what is it that you need, right? You need to be asking yourself that. And then self-love. How do we learn how to love ourselves better? Um, because no one's going to love you like you. And I think a lot of times in relationships, that's kind of where they go wrong, because we're looking at the other person to love us a certain way, right? I'm mad at you because you don't love me this way. When really, we have to do it for ourselves first, right? How do you create that space of love for yourself? And then the other person just kind of is a enhancement of it, not responsible for it, if that makes sense. The other thing he talks about is breathing, right? The idea that every day we take breaths, right? It's part of our life cycle, like our life force. We have to breathe to survive, and yet we don't necessarily think about it, right? We don't take time out the day to just to breathe, right? To take in the air, to pay attention to how we're breathing, right? How do we get the maximal amount of oxygen in our body? And that's one of the things I'll share with you a little later. That'll be our tip for the day, is a good breathing technique to help make sure that we're getting the oxygen in, right? Our body, our organs, everything inside of us needs oxygen. And yet we don't think about breathing. It just happens. But it's something that we can be more intentional with. And it's also a great way to help to release stress, right? When we're being more intentional with the way that we're breathing, when we're being more intentional with taking out time just to have that moment of breath, it actually does so much inside of our nervous system. It does so much inside of our body to really shift us out of a state of stress, fight, flight, all that kind of stuff, and move us more into a space of calm and relaxation. Because our brains, right, is really just, it's like a computer. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it does these amazing things, but it still needs some direction sometimes. And it works on autopilot a lot. So the more intentional we become of taking moments out, right? It takes 2 seconds for you to just take a breath, right? If you're feeling overwhelmed, right? Just to take a moment, just to breathe, give yourself a chance to reset so that your mind can actually think of the next step, right? We're so used to just doing, and not taking that moment of pause. And that's what the moment of pause is really for, is to give us a chance to breathe. Deep breath. So that your brain can think, right? Now it's got enough oxygen to figure out what's next. So just breathing. The other thing he talks about is sensing, right? And that's a really big one that we don't do a lot of. We have 5 senses, right? We see, we hear, we smell, we touch, we taste. But do we enjoy those things, right? Do we get so much in the monotony of life and the cycle of what's going on that we don't take time to smell the roses, that we don't take time to see what's in front of us, that we're not taking time to hear, right? What's going on. And that's where mindfulness comes in. Mindfulness is a really great way for you to start to be more intentional and learning how to use those senses to enjoy pleasure and passion, right? Life is meant to be fun and to have lots of that, right? But we can't do that if we're not paying attention to what's going on. So even when you're sitting down to eat, right? Are you enjoying your food? Or are you just kind of scarfing it down? Are you tasting it, smelling it, like enjoying? You can always tell when somebody's enjoying their meal, right? They get to dancing. I know I do sometimes, especially if it's something really good. Avocado on anything makes me dance. And are you smelling it? Are you tasting the flavor? How sometimes you ever had that meal where you just like kind of close your eyes, you just like sit back, and it just takes you to a whole nother experience. That's what we should be experiencing more in life, right? And it's out there. We're just so busy, zipping around, that we forget to take time to just sense. So that's one of the things that John Travis talked about, right? Is taking time to sense, use our five senses to experience the world. Then he talks about eating, right? That's where that nutrition comes in. So I also like it because he breaks those things down, right? In the general wellness wheel, physical health kind of encompasses all of those things, but exercise generally pops out to the front. But what are we eating? What are we feeding our bodies, right? Is it something that makes you feel, bogged down and heavy? Or are you eating things that make you feel light and joyful? Are you eating things that you enjoy, that you like? A lot of times, when my clients come to me and they're trying to make, different changes in terms of their eatings, or, sometimes I'll run a detox and we kind of go through that. I always express to them to start with the things you like, right? Most of the time we think of taking away, or we think of dieting and we think everything has to be bland, but it doesn't. Like, start with the foods you enjoy eating, that are healthy, and then build your recipes from there, so that it doesn't feel like you're losing something. Because when it comes to our brains, if it's something that you're going to lose, your brain is going to fight you on it, because it's like, that's not what we talked about, that's not what we do. It feels like danger to your brain when you do things that you don't want to do, because it's used to keeping you safe, right? That's why we have autopilot and things, because that's how we did it before. um, I talked about this, and I talk about this a lot, but the movie, and I always forget the name of the movie. I don't know why it comes out, but it's like where it's the emotions, and I'm sure I'll think about it at the end. Um, but in that movie, each of the emotions kind of goes through something, right? Anger is, gets all upset and blows a gasket, and then you have the one that's scared and he's always curious. And so on one of the scenes in the movie, he talked about, the girl was trying to figure out about school, and so happiness was like, oh, go figure out like all the worst things that could happen. Well, that's what our brains does, or that's what our brains do, is it takes in information and it figures out what is the best thing I can do to keep you safe. So if that means that you going out for this new position you feel awkward, your brain's gonna be like, nope, we don't want to do it. Stop. Flag on the play. That's where fear jumps in, right? And gets in there and says, stop, don't do it, run away, right? Don't put your hand on the hot stove. Um, it also works when we're trying something new, trying a new habit, right? If in your head dieting sounds like a bad idea, it sounds like it's going to taste bad and you're going to have a bad experience, then your brain is going to be like, oh, well, that we don't want to do that. We don't want any parts of that. You give that to somebody else. We got other things to do. There's this bag of chips over here. I'm going to go eat that, right? And then you're all compelled to go eat the bag of chips. And then you're upset because you really wanted to do something else. So we kind of have to, that whole fake it till you make it. Sometimes we have to fake it till you make it and get yourself really excited about something that, you may not be really excited about doing, so that your brain can identify it as, oh yeah, we do want to do this thing. All right, come on, y'all, let's go get this done, right? Or sometimes going back to that breath, we have to calm the brain down, right? Because it's in high alert, red flags are flying all over the place. So we got to calm ourselves back down, right? Take a few breaths, almost like coddle yourself. Like, it's okay. We got this. We can do this, right? We can eat that eggplant, right? We're going to like it. But if you start with foods you like already, then you don't have to do as much of that, and then you can build from there. So, baby steps, right? Start with the things you like. Instead of feeling like you have to take away things, just start adding things, right? So maybe if you're thinking, you need more water, start with that. Start adding water instead of taking something away, because now at least you're flushing your body out, right? As you're learning to let go of the sugar or let go of some of those things. So baby steps. The other part that he talked about was moving. So moving our bodies. And again, whenever we think of moving, we always attach it to exercise. But I want you to really think of moving in your body is moving, right? Everything. Breathing is actually movement, right? Standing up is movement. Dancing is movement. walking, all of those things that we need to do more of for our bodies, especially as we are aging. You listen, if people have been telling me forever about the once you get over the 40 mark, well, it's true. I don't know what happens when you go over 40. It's like stuff that you had no idea that was going to hurt starts hurting. Like my foot was hurting one day. Like, why is my foot hurting? I went for a long walk and then afterwards it just hurt. There was nothing, like nothing that should have injured me, like nothing, I don't know, but the foot was hurting and I was all upset. But yeah, so we have to move our bodies, right? I really now have to stretch a little bit more than I did when I was 20, right? So I have to be more mindful of preparing myself even for movement. So just kind of moving your body, right? If you're trying to get on a new routine or you're trying to change a habit, start with what you like first. And I tell my clients the same thing. If you like to dance, do that, right? Because 10 minutes of that, 20 minutes of that, that's some calories burned, right? As you build up to something more strenuous. But at least it will be a great way to help trick your brain into remembering that you actually want to do this versus feeling like you're losing something and it shutting it down. The next thing he talked about was feeling, right? So our feelings are all over the place. Our feelings are fickle, right? One moment you're super excited about something, the next moment you're terribly upset or you're fearful. Our emotions and feelings are everywhere. And so the more aware we become of that, and even some of the triggers, then the better able we are to manage ourselves, right? It goes back to that self-responsibility. And remember, when we talk about wellness, it's all connected. Like you can't just pull one piece of wellness out and talk about that, right? You have to balance them all out. And they all are interconnected. So if you're fixing one thing, it's actually going to shift and fix some other things. If you're not focusing on one thing, it can actually, have the opposite effect and start to deteriorate some of those other areas. So we can't just be hyper focused on one thing. We got to spread it out and look at it as a large picture and versus one little individual entity. So getting our emotions in check, paying attention to how we're feeling, and how we're responding to things. The other thing is our thoughts, and there is a definite big connection between our thoughts and feelings, right? Those things that we think. Again, back to that brain it's pulling from the past, right? It's pulling from everywhere. So, a lot of our thoughts are based off of our old experiences, past experiences, right? Even some of that fear that we have around doing different things, it's because it's based off of something you were thinking about or something that you learned previously, because that's all you have to go off of. So we have to be mindful of how those thoughts are interfering with our lives, right? How is it interfering with the relationship that you have with other people? You know what I mean? Like, are you getting offended every time somebody's saying something to you? Then you need to start checking your thoughts. What is the meaning that you made of that conversation that you're having with that person that's causing you to feel offended, right? So I'm sure you can start to see the connection here of how all of this plays out and can either be pushing us towards wellness or towards illness. The other thing that he added on his wellness continuum is work and play. And I love the fact that he added that there because on some of the other ones, they just talk about career, right? There's not really, some of the newer ones are starting to add like pleasure in there, but we have to work and play, right? It has to be a balance. It can't be serious all the time. And how do we connect the two? How can we have an and where we get to work and play? You know what I mean? Like where you can have fun at your job, and not feel like it's, oh, like I remember, many years ago, before I got on my wellness journey and my path to peace, I was in a job which I loved it when I started, and then it just went downhill from there. And a lot of it was just because I didn't have balance. I didn't understand kind of, some of the things that I needed in my life. And so, it just got, it was horrible. Like I remember I used to count down like day one, start thinking about like when's the next break, you know what I mean? When's the end of the year, all that kind of stuff. And now, as a coach, and I even have, I do another job where I do like some team building and stuff like that. And we go out, we do like the ropes courses and stuff like that. Man, I have so much fun out there. So I get to work and play all wrapped up in one. Same thing when I'm coaching people, right? It feels good. It feels like I'm talking to like just a really close friend, right? So for me, when I'm working, it feels like play. It feels pleasurable because it's something I enjoy doing. So if you're in the job and you're not quite feeling it, then get curious, right? Nobody's saying you got to walk off the job today, but get curious about, what might be a better fit for you. I remember when I was in counseling many, many years ago before I started coaching. And I remember my counselor told me I needed to quit my job. And I'm looking at her like, what kind of advice is this that I'm getting here? But it was the best advice she could have given me. Like I needed that. And eventually I did. And I didn't, just walk off at that moment. It took a while, but I needed a change of pace. And now I see the difference, right? So don't get so boxed in to the roles or to, what you're doing that you feel like you can't do something else, or at least explore it, right? Nobody said you got to shift today, but explore, like, is there something else that you might enjoy doing? And is that open? Is it an option? Maybe it's not an option this year, but maybe you create a plan 2-3 years from now, it might be something. So definitely making sure that we are not only working, but we are playing. The next one is communication. He talks a lot about making sure that we are learning how to communicate with one another, right? We are social beings, even us introverts, those of us that don't necessarily like being around people all the time, but we still need to be able to communicate, to express our desires, our interests, our wants, our needs, to be able to ask for help. Have support systems, to be able to just connect with other people. So there's something to be said about that, learning how to communicate and making sure that people are communicating with you as well and feeling comfortable being able to come to you and talk about things, right? It has to be a two-way street, but it's so necessary for our development as human beings. Intimacy is a big one. And I think especially like I know growing up in the church, like I felt like intimacy was like off limits. I just remember like having this weird relationship with the idea of intimacy. Um, and of course, there's different layers of intimacy, right? Sometimes it's just a connection or a hug, right? It doesn't always have to be sexual, but I definitely think that we have to start to explore that more, right? How can we be more intimate with our loved ones, right? Whether that's a family member, whether that's a friend, whether that's a romantic relationship, right? Making sure that we have that time for ourselves, because that also feeds our souls, right? To feel connected with people on a deeper level. Then the 11th dimension is finding meaning, right? Finding purpose. And I think this is a big one. Whenever, I pull this up, or I'm actually, whenever I'm doing something about purpose, it's always a big thing because so many people, including myself, at some point have asked that question, like, what am I here for? Like, trying to make sense of the life that we're living and wanting to find your way, find your place in it. And so, when it comes to that, it's being able to, again, be curious, right? Asking questions, and then delving into different areas, whether it's religion, whether you're doing some research on something, finding something that for you lights you up, right? That when you're doing it, it really makes you feel good, right? To know that, even if it's serving other people, but really just figuring out like, what is your gift? We all have one. There's not one of us born on this earth that doesn't have a gift. And I think sometimes we overemphasize because we kind of think of it as like this huge big thing. But again, small things, right? Are you the person that's always like calling somebody up to check on somebody, right? That's a gift. Are you the person that likes to, help and make sure everybody's good? Are you the teacher that always seems to be able to download information and pour it back out in a simple, easy way for other people, right? All of those things are gifts, and all of those things are helping us to find meaning in our lives and how we fit in. And I think we really do have to put the horse blinders on sometimes, right? And stop looking at, what's going on, what our families did or what our friends are doing, right? Because their path is going to be different from yours. So really starting to look inside about what it is that you need, or what are the things that you do that come natural for you, right? It's not something you gotta, study in a book. And of course, we always want to grow and be better, but a lot of, when it comes to our purpose, most of it is natural. It's the thing you do natural with ease, right? And then you stack some layers on top of that, as you develop and um, build those skills out. But what are those things that you're already doing that are helpful to humanity, that are helpful to the people around you, right? Because our purpose isn't for us. We don't have it just so that we can hold it all to ourselves. It's really about how are we here to help the collective, right? How do we connect? How do we help the collective? And then the last one was transcending. And that one's a big one, right? A lot of times when we think of wellness, we leave out the spiritual piece, especially, some people are kind of leery about it, or they don't want to get into the discussions or have, arguments with somebody about religion and all that kind of stuff. And the thing is, religion isn't about or transcending spirituality. That's what I want to say. Spirituality is not about religion. It is about you connecting to something that's greater than yourself. So when we are thinking about our spiritual wellness, that transcending is transcending what we see here, right? Because this isn't the end all be all. There is something greater. And even whether you're into Scientology, or it doesn't matter what religion you're in, they all kind of lead to something that's bigger than you, right? Something that you can't see, an energy source that's bigger than you. And the more that we start to get curious, the more that we start to learn about ourselves, the more that we start to connect, right? There's a million different religions out there, right? And for different people, they make sense. And so I think when we stop trying to judge, right? Oh, well, yours doesn't do this. And it doesn't matter if that person believes in that thing and it was working for them and it brings them happiness and joy, and it helps them to connect, then it's good for them, right? Who are we to say? We don't know. None of us knows everything. So I think we're getting to a space in life right now where we really do have to be more conscious of how we're judging, right? It doesn't matter what someone else works for someone else. What works for you, right? And yes, we can share out, the beauty of what we've learned. But at the end of the day, when we start pointing the finger, or when we start trying to put down something that someone else believes in, then we really need to take a look at ourselves, because how's that helping, right? How's it helpful for you to get into a 20-minute argument with somebody about a religion? Because at the end of the day, they're still going to walk away with their belief. And now they're mad at you, right? now, both of you are walking away with this negative energy versus just being able to be accepting. I've been able to go to so many different types of religious ceremonies and things like that because I know who God is for me. And so therefore I can openly, share out or hear from other people because there's something I might learn that might help me. But I think even more so, it's helped me to be more compassionate to people. And I think that's really the true way that we're trying to be, is to be more compassionate, right? There's something out here for everyone. And so you just have to figure out, how is it that you can best become the best version of yourself? How can you balance out your wellness, right? Your being. How can you learn how to be the best version of you, the most authentic version of you, so that you are helping, not hurting other people? So I hope that was informational. I hope it was helpful. Before we jump off, we're going to just do one really big breathing technique. And that actually was our question for today is, what is an easy way to help to relieve stress or to calm yourself down? And so my tip for you today is to breathe. And so we're going to practice really quickly what we call diaphragmatic breathing. Super simple, but the opposite of what we do when we're generally breathing. Most of the time when we're breathing, we just kind of breathe, we breathe through our mouth a lot of times, or we're just kind of breathing in and out through our nose. And a lot of times our bellies aren't like expanding and filling up with air. So I'm just going to kind of walk you through that for a quick second. And then I invite you to try that out. So that can be something that you can try out for the next 2 weeks to really see, how that made a difference. Does it make you feel more calm, relaxed, right? And that's something you can do anytime, anywhere, because that's what I'm all about, like practical things, right? If you're going to tell me about something, that I need to be doing, then I need a quick solution, or I need a practical solution that I can do that's going to help me out. So when we think about the diaphragmatic breathing, what you're going to breathe through your nose. So you're taking a deep breath through your nose. And as you do that, you're going to fill your belly up with air like a big balloon. So we're breathing in, your belly's going to expand. Generally, we think to breathe in and your belly kind of deflates. But this time, I want you to really be intentional of breathing in nice and slow and letting your belly fill up as much as possible with air. And then as you exhale, you're going to exhale out of your mouth, and you're going to allow your belly to compress back down. So almost as if your belly button is going back towards your back. Okay. So again, for diaphragmatic breathing, as you breathe in, you're breathing in nice and slow through your nose, and you're going to fill your belly up like a big balloon, as big as you can get it. And then as you exhale out of your mouth, you're going to allow your abdominal muscles to contract and go backwards towards your back muscles. And so one more time, I'm going to talk you through that one last time. You're going to take a deep breath in through your nose, filling your belly up as big as it can as a balloon, allowing all of that oxygen and air to enter into your diaphragm. And then as you exhale, you're breathing out of your mouth as if you were blowing out a birthday candle. And you're going to let your belly relax and go back in towards your back. So that breath is so helpful. Number one, because again, our bodies need oxygen. And so the more, as we fill our bellies up, it really allows your diaphragm to open up to bring in our lungs, right? It opens everything up so that we're taking a maximal amount of oxygen. And then as you're exhaling, it's actually when you're pushing your belly back towards your back, it actually is allowing you to fully release all the air. Because sometimes when we breathe just shallow breaths, sometimes the air gets caught in our lungs, right? We're not getting it all out. So with this type of breathing, it really allows you to get a maximal amount of oxygen in, and it allows you to push a maximal amount of carbon dioxide out, so that you are really getting in that fresh, clean air to circulate in your body, and we're releasing some of that toxic air and energy out into the atmosphere, those things that we don't need. And so that's really helpful. As I always talk about energy, if you're stressed out, if you're feeling frustrated, right, that diaphragmatic breathing is a great way for you to be able to release that energy out, so that it's not getting just stuck in your body and wreaking havoc all over. So I want to thank you again for joining me on the Culture of Wellness, where we are providing practical everyday tips to help you live your best life. I hope you'll join me next time. As we'll have different guests come on. Make sure that you check me out on all social media platforms at Culture of Wellness. You can also find me on the She Is Still Dope podcast app. And then for those of you who are looking for more information, maybe you have some questions, maybe you're looking for a workshop for your staff, then check me out at urbanedrx.com. That's URBANEDRX.com for more information about my company and some of the things that I do to support people. So thanks again. And until next time, make sure that you are letting your light shine so that others can find their way in darkness.